All right, now that you've tried these exercises, let's check your answers. And if you're stuck, you can use this to help get unstuck. We're using the rule here in general that uh, a to the 1 over n, anything to the power 1 over n, that fractional exponent really means an nth root of a. So here, if you have 144 to the power 1 half, that means a square root of 144. And the square root of 144 is just 12. If you have a negative 1 half power, well, the negative means it goes in the denominator. That's what G.1 was all about. Hopefully you got some practice with that. So that's what the negative does, is it puts that in the denominator. Now that 1 half power means the square root of 144, which we just figured out was 12. So it becomes 1 over the square root of 144, which is 1/12. All right, negative 9 to the 1 half, that means negative the square root of 9. And the order of operations, you might be thinking, why is the negative on the outside instead of on the inside? Well, the order of operations here is that you want to think of the negative as like negative 1 times 9 to the 1 half, and multiplication happens after you do exponents. So the base of the exponent should just be the 9 and not include the negative. So the square root of 9 is just 3. So this is just negative 3. All right, this one, when you have parentheses around it here, the parentheses mean negative 9 is the base of the exponent. So in this case, this means negative 9 inside the square root. And the square root of negative 9 would have to be something you can multiply by itself to get negative 9. But any number multiplied by itself is always positive. Even if you take a negative number and put it in here, you're going to get a positive thing. So it's not going to be negative 3, it's just going to be undefined. Because there's no number you can square to get negative 9. What if it's negative 8 to the 1/3? Well, the 1/3 exponent, again, means the root is going to be a cube root. Like so. And so it's a cube root of negative 8. So what we want is something you can raise to the power 3 and get negative 8. Well, does negative 2 work? Let's see. Negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4 times a third negative 2 is going to be negative 8. So yeah, negative 2 works. So because this is an odd number, 3, you can take a third root, a cube root of negative 8, and get negative 2, and that's okay. But if it's an even number like 2, then that's not going to be allowed. Okay, how about this? What if you have 4 to the negative 1 half? Well, remember the negative exponent means this goes in the denominator of a fraction. So it's 4 to the power 1 half. And 4 to the power 1 half means the square root of 4, which is 2. So this just gives you 1 over 2. How about here? 27 to the 5/3. So let's I wrote down the rule here if you have a 1 over n, but what if you have a different thing in the top of the exponent, in the numerator of the exponent? We can use one of these rules here. So we could write this as 27 to the power 5, and then the cube root of that. But 27 to the power 5 is a humongous number. I don't want to deal with that. Maybe I could do it the other way. What if you do the cube root of 27 and then that to the power 5? That sounds a lot more reasonable, because you can do the cube root of 27. It's 3, because 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. And then 3 to the power 5 is going to be 243. 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, 5 times. All right, this one is getting pretty gnarly. We've got 9/16, which is my birthday, September 16th. Cool. Anyways, the negative exponent here, what I'm going to do is use a definition to write that as 1 over 9/16 to the power positive 3/2. Okay, so then what do you do about that? Well, I'm going to do 9 to the power 3/2 and 16 to the power 3/2. So 9 to the power 3/2 we can deal with sort of the same way we did with this one, remembering that this is all in the denominator of this big fraction with a 1 in the top. So 9 to the power 3/2, I'm going to do that as 9. Well, actually, I'm sorry, before I do that, I think we should deal with this gnarly fraction here. I'm going to multiply both sides by this denominator of 16 to the power 3/2. And that's going to cancel out here in the bottom and leave you within the top 16 to the 3/2, and in the bottom of the big fraction 9 to the 3/2. And if you went straight from here to here because you knew that the negative exponent would essentially flip over a fraction, that's okay too. So anyways, let's keep going with this. The 16 to the 3/2, the divided by 2 part, I'm going to do as a square root of 16, and then raise that to the power 3. And then the 9 to the 3/2 is going to be a square root of 9, and then raise that to the power 3. So again, this is using this part of the definition here. So the square root of 16 is 4. The square root of 9 is 3. So you have 4 to the power 3 over 3 to the power 3, which gives you 64/27. Okay, let's look at exercise 5. So if we're going to write each of the following as an equivalent expression in the form x to the n and give the value for n. So let's see. 1 over x to the 4 is the same thing as x to the negative 4. That's what the definition of a negative exponent is you put x to the positive 4 power under 1, like this. So this is now in the form x to the n, and the n is just negative 4. All right, here, with this one, well, I'm going to start by saying you have the cube root of x. The cube root of x is the same as x to the 1/3 power. And then, if you want to bring this to the top of the fraction, so it can be in this form, and instead of being under 1, you can write this as x to the negative 1/3 power. And so now this is in the form x to the n, and the n is negative 1/3. Okay, well, let's see. The square root of x to the 6th. Well, a square root, remember there's like an invisible 2 here with any square root. That means to the power 1/2. So this is x to the 6th all to the power 1/2. And you can multiply those exponents. You can do 6 times 1/2, which is 3. So this is just the same thing as x to the power 3. And so in this case, the n, it's a capital N, I guess, is 3. Okay, so looking at exercise 5, part D here, the cube root inside there, I'm going to write as x to the power 1/3, and then you leave the 5 alone, and then multiply them together. 1/3 times 5 is 5/3. So yeah, this gives you x to the 5/3. So the n here is 5/3. All right, let's do the same thing here. The 4th root is the same as the power 1/4. And then you can multiply those together to get 2 times 1/4. 2 times 1/4 is 1/2, so this is 1 over x to the 1/2. And then that you can write it in the numerator by making it negative. So this is the same thing as x to the negative 1/2. That's the definition of a negative exponent there. And so the n here is negative 1/2. All right, and in the next video, you've got some pretty tricky problems. These are hard. Give them a shot. See if you can get them. You might find some mistakes that you're making, and you might get stuck. That's okay. I'll show you how to do these in the next video.